Welcome to Discovery Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I'm proud right now to have 2/3 of our guests here already. The team that made Killer Whales. We've got director Willow Hamilton and lead actor and screenwriter or official writer Wyatt Bunce. I just said official writer, which is a pretty dumb way to introduce someone. But hey, both of you.
I'll take it.
Hello.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
I guess I said that because I know you wrote this amazing script and Willow directed this amazing film. I'm supposed to, during this introduction, I'm going to mention that. So at Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2021, we had the LA premiere of Killer Whales, and you took home the Grand Jury Award for Best Feature Film Comedy. And then at our June festival in June 2022, it got a little fun because Killer Whales came back and won Wyatt Best Actor in a Lead Role. So I'm giving a golf clap for that because, I mean, it's just an amazing performance, an amazing film. All I can say in this intro is that Killer Whales is hilarious, it's smart, it features completely insane characters, which I think I always argue, like at our Q&A at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, which was a ton of fun, that the world is actually filled. You can't actually find a sane person. Like everyone grows up thinking their parents are crazy, and you find out everyone's parents are crazy. We are all crazy. So I actually think it's just wonderful comedy and so smart and so well made. You wanna say where we're on Zoom, so if there's any audio problems, just blame the Zoom Corporation. But you want to introduce yourselves and share a little bit like where you're zooming in from and whatnot?
Sure. I'll start because I think my answer is a little less interesting than Willow's. But I'm zooming in from Los Angeles, California.
I'm familiar with it.
Little town called Los Angeles.
Little town.
Tinseltown.
Not a bad place for an actor and writer to live. Okay, Willow, where are you?
Willow is calling in from Berlin, Germany.
Berlin, Germany, which I told Willow at the mixer that opened the Sherman Oaks Film Festival last November that it's one of my favorite cities. If you're an American who thinks you got to go to London and Paris and Rome maybe and you've handled it, no way. Berlin is actually one of the most essential places to go. And
oh, dude, for sure. Any American, I maybe this is a generalization, but any American I found who comes to Berlin, it like finds it's like a honeypot for the US. Because I feel like it offers the atmosphere, like the culture of New York, but with this chillness, where people are less focused on career and I don't know, just hanging out in the street drinking beers. And everyone, the Americans love it. The Americans really love Berlin.
We really do, and not that this podcast should be all about Berlin, but I'll add that. In a lot of ways, it's an amazing country to visit, an amazing city, and Germany is an amazing country because I've always told people, my brother worked for Ford Motor Company and they moved him to Germany for 4 years, so that's why I spent a lot of time there. And I could blindfold the average suburban American and then take them to a suburb of Berlin and take the blindfold off, and they wouldn't know they've left America till they notice that the freeway off-ramp says Ausfahrt. So anyway, that's my Berlin spiel. So we're going to have one more member of the Killer Whales team join us, producer and actor Thom Reidy. But we don't have to wait for him. He told us to start. So he's here. I'm about to.
Right on cue.
Right on cue. He's going to pop up. Should we make him do his bio first then? Or would one of you like to go first?
Why?
Let's make.
Yeah,
I'll start and give Tom a second to think.
Perfect. He's still logging. It's still logging, of course, because Zoom is never speedy.
Shall I dive in?
Yeah, go for it. This is Wyatt Bunce, the amazing writer and actor, lead actor. I mean, you carry this film.
Thank you.
Your character is on screen so much.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. So my name's Wyatt Bunce. I grew up in Idaho, in Sun Valley, Idaho, small ski resort town. And I really think my sisters, I have three sisters, two older sisters, because I watched and listened to whatever my older sisters were watching and listening to, my sense of humor, my taste in films was completely influenced by them. And they were pretty radical for their age too. They were like watching a lot of edgy stuff. But the through line for all of us was British comedy. And we loved Monty Python. We loved Mr. Bean. I grew up we had the Mr. Bean VHS tape sets, the ones that are different colors of the actual show. And I really loved, Peter Sellers. My dad loved Peter Sellers. And so those were big. And then they would watch Christopher Guest, Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman. And so I was watching what they were watching, and that really influenced me. And I think that's why, down the road, as I'm getting into high school, trying to make them laugh, my older sisters laugh. It came from that same pool that we were watching earlier. And so I love to make them laugh. And I think that's the reason why I got into entertainment. And I just remember in college, I took a screenwriting class the last quarter of college, and all this old stuff was coming. We wrote this script, and it was really a combination of like Being There by Peter Sellers, or starring Peter Sellers, and a lot of those old British classics. And so I'd say that was kind of my journey, my influence, and something I'm always drawing on when I'm creating stuff.
I mean, I don't think it takes a genius to say that growing up on Monty Python, the TV series and the films, is a masterclass in absurdist comedy.
Yes.
I mean, exactly. It just doesn't get better.
Yeah, I agree.
And did you get out of Iowa for college, or did you stay?
Idaho. I did get out of Idaho. No, that's okay. Everyone does that. And my dad is actually from Iowa, so I do have Iowa in my blood. But yeah, got out of Idaho. We all actually met at Stanford in the Bay Area, and then came down to LA pretty much right after graduation. So I was in Idaho until I was 18, then went off to college down to LA after.
And this is a Stanford crew made this film?
The three of us are.
Well, I was
Stanford
with
boys.
My older brother. I'm also a younger brother like you are. And I think younger siblings are forced to be the entertainer in the family almost always, right? And my older brother is an engineer from Stanford, and I was hanging out with 3 Stanford grads just yesterday. So 2 days in a row,
Nice.
I'm with three big brains. Although you all are a lot funnier.
Yeah, maybe wacky brains.
For sure. I imagine Stanford just offer I actually urge people to apply there because there's so many. It's such an enriching university in the non-academic sense too. There's a lot of art. Like, were there great opportunities up there for writing and playing with equipment and cameras and stuff?
Yeah, I'll let Willow speak to the equipment side of that, but in terms of writing, absolutely. We had an incredible screenwriting teacher. There was one like main guy named Adam Tobin, who just an incredible teacher. I mean, he really, really good at teaching screenwriting, and he's helped us out, stayed in touch with us, and he's just very active in keeping up with his old students. So I know we both really appreciated Adam Tobin. And then the writing department, I was an English major, lots of really, fantastic creative writing opportunities there too. The novelist, Richard Powers, I don't know if you're familiar, but he wrote the book called The Overstory, which won the Pulitzer Prize a couple years ago. But he was at Stanford for just 1 year. And it just so wound up that I was in his senior seminar. So it was just 8 of us with this amazing writer. So there are lots of awesome opportunities as far as writing goes. But Willow will know more about equipment.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, my experience up there visiting was like, if you had a garage band, you didn't have to play in a garage. There were like rehearsal spaces you could just check out and stuff. I was just very cool. All right, Willow, you want to
exactly
share your upbringing and how you got into filmmaking?
Totally. Yeah. So kind of similar to Wyatt, I also had a familial influence. My older brother, who's 10 years older than me, really wanted to, he's like always showing me movies that he thought would blow my mind, or like somehow mess with my sense of reality. At a very young age. So I was like watching like Fight Club, The Matrix, American Psycho, all of these movies which are kind of subverting your sense of what's going on, or like traditional structures. And I guess that really shaped actually how I think also as a person. But I think they also, just in terms of like the movies that I now make, I think I was really struck by the intensity of movies, like how movies can create a very charged, intense atmosphere that stay with you. And that's very much sort of my goal now as a filmmaker is to do that, to like create these striking visuals and moments. But I didn't get into filmmaking because of that. I when I was like 16 or 17, I saw this movie called The Cove, which is a documentary, if people haven't seen it, about the dolphin harvest in Japan, this village called Taiji. And it's a very polemical documentary, which, you know, like it paints a pretty harsh picture of that aspect of the culture. But as a 17-year-old, seeing like the ocean turn red with blood and these dolphins like flipping around, it totally rocked me. And it changed the way I ate and the way I thought about food and stuff. And I actually really got into wanting to do like animal rights and wanting to make films about animal rights, like Earthlings and stuff like that, that would change people's attitudes and habits to food. So I came to Stanford wanting to do that, and I got a little overwhelmed with the nuances of the food systems, and certainly in the US, it wasn't quite as black and white as I assumed as a teenager. And I ended up just being more interested in film and maybe returning more to that original fascination with images and atmospheres. And so that's kind of how I ended up where I am now. Just started teaching myself. I studied film and media studies, which was a theoretical degree at Stanford. There was one practical course, which was in the documentary department. The documentary department has some nice cameras for sure, some good equipment. The rest of us did not really have that much equipment, though I can't really complain because, I mean, we still had in the library, you could take out DSLRs. The computers in the library were also installed with Final Cut and later Premiere. So for a student filmmaker, you absolutely had everything you needed if you really wanted to teach yourself movie making, which is what I did with a couple of other people, along with also, like Wyatt said, Adam Tobin. His mentorship for a lot of filmmakers was really big. Yeah.
And I think you might have left out where you grew up.
Oh yeah, I grew up in London.
Fair enough. I wasn't going to make an assumption.
No, I moved around a lot, I guess. So I have a somewhat mixed identity. But no, I was growing up in London.
A global citizen of sorts.
Yes, absolutely.
For sure. And then you ended up in California.
For some part of my life.
All right, excellent. I will. Here, Tom, we get to hear your voice for the first time.
Hello, hello. Forgive the tardiness, although I guess if I come in third, I may not have missed a whole lot. How are you, Jeff?
Hey, so yeah, we're just covering what inspired each of you to get involved in the wonderful world of film.
Sure. I think like many of us down in this town, there isn't sort of one prescribed path, especially for those who didn't grow up with the sort of dream of becoming an actor, a writer, producer, director. I was a kid that just wanted to be a baseball player. And then until I realized I wasn't very good at baseball, I just want to be a camp counselor. And then I did that. And then I was like, all right, well, what's next? At Stanford, I did have access to the arts through music. I was in a band, actually. We did have practice spaces, and that was a great luxury for us. But I was studying engineering, and my life was set up to be something much different. In fact, when I finished school, I moved to Korea, South Korea, to pursue a game design job, and that job took me to Berlin, where I was able to reconnect kind of officially with Willow. I'll never forget our little coffee date one morning. I took good pictures of each other. And do you remember that, Willow? You must remember that. Anyway,
God, I'm embarrassingly going to confess to that. Wait, can you jog my memory?
It's not important at all. The important part is, like, I caught the artist bug while living in Berlin and moved to LA on the presumed regret, this potential regret that if I don't do this now, if I don't see this through, this sort of like fledgling ambition of storytelling, of music, of artistry, whatever that was, I'm going to regret that. So I ended up here. And then it's just kind of been like, kind of a slow path of deduction, kind of trying on various hats, seeing what fits and what doesn't, and kind of, listening to my friends, the opportunities that I've had the privilege of having come into my life, saying yes to things. I think that is more than anything else the narrative that has put me, in this position today. I got to wear many different hats on this production. Foremost, the producer. But I came late to the artistic relationship between Willow and Wyatt. They've made a number of short films together, and they needed someone to kind of help push this film through the final phase. We didn't know that final phase would last 3 more years to land us in the position to be released on Apple TV tomorrow, amongst other various VOD platforms. But yeah, I've worked in writers' rooms. I've worked for directors. I've worked as a producer for other short films. This is my first feature film. I currently work in the representation side of the business. But I've got my hands wet, and I'm certainly here to stay.
For sure. All right. Well, so many questions have now been inspired, but I think I want to hear about the early work, the early shorts that Willow and Wyatt threw together, because I'm curious. Although I do want to point out that as the brother of an engineer, the creativity involved in engineering is often ignored. A lot of people think of engineering as a really cold science, but the truth is it's coming up with creative solutions to problems. And as 3 individuals who have made a feature film together, I'm sure your life has been nothing but trying to solve problems for a couple of years.
Yeah. And speaking to that, Tom was an engineering major at Stanford, and I found that Tom's product design is what he majored. I found that product design brain has been incredibly helpful in getting us organized and getting us, productive and useful. Yeah. So I'll just say that.
Thanks, buddy. What's funny about this team is it's very much an ad hoc sort of, oh, he's good at this, we need him for that, let's bring him on board. And then once the 3 of us were kind of on board together, it became this sort of like, really neat sort of balancing system where I'm giving what other people can't give, and vice versa. Those dynamics change over time, given the various differences and where we come from in terms of our, experiential backgrounds. It ultimately combined to be something that, again, landed us in the position to have a film come out tomorrow on Apple TV.
For sure. I mean, you're the 3 credited producers on the film and all did other roles. But yeah, absolutely. It's a team sport, right? And if someone doesn't have a position covered, you just do it. You don't care about the title. You don't care if it's your official role. I'm sure all the time you were stepping in. But all right, well, let's go back. Did you two make a short in school or soon after?
So it was soon after, and actually Willow and I met on the dance floor at a mutual friend's birthday, and we just both loved David Bowie. And that got us talking. And then I knew I really wanted to make something. I really wanted to make a movie. And Willow was the first person I talked to who was not only available to do that, but also really wanted to make a movie too. And we connected. And I don't think I think Willow probably had a more developed creative voice at the time. I had I think maybe an awkward duckling phase of trying to find my voice for a while there, but we got together and we would meet in this bar, the Blue Note or something like that.
Something.
So anyway,
Blue something.
Yeah, blue collar. I think it actually was
Blue collar,
Hollywood.
Right. Yeah.
But then, and we would just toss around ideas, and then the first thing that happened was Willow directed a little horror short story I wrote called 1LDK. And I really loved the way Willow did that, made it totally different, but in this very atmospheric way, strange way. And I thought it was a cool alchemy to see that. And then, we went on to make a couple more that I'll let Willow speak to.
Yeah. I also just thinking back, it's funny, I often forget this, but the very first thing we started writing together in the Blue Collar was a mockumentary.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Way back when. But
that was wacky.
Yeah. No, we went on to make a couple of others. We made a short about sports and disability in Newcastle in the north of England, called Hawaii, which is kind of Geordie for like, let's go, come on. And we also made a very bizarre little film called Snail Man, which was about a postman who discovers a snail in his mailbag and begins to undergo a metamorphosis. And I think that was our canon before Killer Whales.
Yep.
I mean, there was also a period where we were writing another script called Sugar Pine.
Yeah.
Like that. I think that was like almost a year of writing on that. But we decided to do Killer Whales first because it was more manageable from a production standpoint. Sugar Pine was
Pine was a sprawling, like 3 storylines, many characters, all set all around Lake Tahoe. That it just would have been a huge production.
Yeah, for a first film, it would have been crazy. Yeah.
And yet, Killer Whales is a far more expansive feature film than most first efforts. I mean, as far as cast, as far as locations. But it's nice to hear that for you, it was the more conservative choice.
Yes. But Killer Whales did expand. We originally wrote it. It was set in one room because we wanted to make it for very cheap. We're like, how much money do we think we could get? And we're like, okay, we could treat this more like a theatrical production, set it in one room, keep it to just 3 cast members. And then it expanded. It expanded due to a lot of factors,
but mainly I assume inspiration and just the refusal to give up on a good idea. If you had a better idea, you went with it instead of saying, no, the rule is we don't leave this room. And because that film might have been good. I've seen a good one-room film or two, but most of them aren't.
Yeah.
It's hard. True. It's hard to ask an audience to spend 90 minutes in a room.
Yeah. And boy, I was finding it was so hard to write. I wrote that thing like 14 times trying to make it intriguing or find something in there. And it was really very challenging.
Right, but with Wyatt and Willow throwing ideas off each other at Blue Collar and whatnot.
Yeah.
What was there something, was the goal to write a feature film and then make it? Or did when this idea popped up, was there that light bulb moment of like, this one could happen?
I think I'll speak for myself, but I definitely wanted to make a feature. I just wanted to do something big, a big project. And I think both of us saw the shorts as get our feet wet, but we ultimately wanted to make a feature. And then we had one of our shorts at the Austin Film Festival. And I remember there we met up in a pizza place and we were like, it's time for us to make a feature. And I had a little seed for an idea that was called The Apartment. Do you remember that, Willow? The Killer Whales was originally called The Apartment.
Oh my God. I forgot.
Yeah. And has it come a long way since then, but yeah. Did you, Willow, also want to make a feature? Was that like something you were set on? Or was
definitely. Absolutely. I think if you're a young filmmaker, like the golden goose is the feature. I definitely wanted to make something, and I think like when you've only done shorts, you can't imagine how much work and like how many levels of difficulty doing a feature is above doing a short. But it definitely calls you, like there's a limit to the story that you can tell in a short, and the kind of the pacing, this atmospheric pacing that you can do in a short. So I was very drawn to it for sure.
Cool. And I guess so. At what point did Tom come in?
Great question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to hear it from your perspective, Willow.
Yeah.
Well, I remember Tom coming in to the bar after we'd shot. We were like wrapping Killer Whales.
The Cha-Cha Lounge?
Yeah, was it Red Lion?
Cha-Cha Lounge. Yeah.
Oh, it was Red Lion before the Cha-Cha Lounge. Okay, sorry.
Oh, interesting. I think I only saw you at Cha-Cha Lounge. But anyway, like I think that was the first time I saw you in relation to Killer Whales anyway. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Essentially, they had this movie that they had invited me to be a part of before they started production called Killer Whales, but still occupying my need for financial security, a la like the engineering Stanford degree that kind of puts you on that path. I wasn't so ready to kind of let any of that go yet. And I had an opportunity to work in a writer's room. So I was like, I'm going to do that. Best of luck to you guys. We'll be in touch. These are close friends of mine, before we started working together. And so they went off and shot for 2 weeks, wrapped principal photography. And of course I crashed the wrap party, drinking big tankards of lager at the Red Lion. And they were like, we need someone to produce the post component of this journey and see it through the festival circuit, strategize for that, and see it into distribution if we're fortunate enough to make it to that point. And I said, well, why? Are you sure? I don't have great experience in this. And they were like, you're fine. Let's do it. Let's do it. They took a chance on me. And I think, I'm in debt to that, grateful for that. The experience that I've had on this project has really been a kind of answer to the question of, should I go to film school? Which I think a lot of people ask when they end up in this sort of town. And the answer is more often than not, no. I think if you're able to corral any sort of money together, that should be spent directly on your experience as a filmmaker, not as someone who is going to sit in a classroom for a few weeks before they're able to get their hands on a camera. I think that was an incredible learning experience for me, and it really pushed the ball along for me professionally. So, we kind of dove right in. We mocked up what the post schedule would look like, what our budget was going to look like, which had kind of been inherited, and, set that against the timeline for festivals. We were working with, a few different mentors at the time, people who had kind of done this before. And I think that, again, was part of a huge learning experience, who to trust, who not to trust. I think all of us found, like many of us, that, people really love to spout, words of encouragement and hope and support. And then when the time comes, maybe they're not there anymore. And that's okay. That's a nice sort of thing. It's a nice lesson to learn, not to be cynical or anything like that, but just the reality of it is, you are only as good as the effort that you're going to put into something. And I think the three of us, had to take that to heart at different points in the process. But just to kind of talk about the timeline again, we finished this the principal photography wrapped in the summer of 2019. It took Willow, who was our principal editor, however many months to finish the edit. And that's when I was brought on board. And so I was brought on board with a first cut and this sort of ambiguous path forward. And the three of us sat down, we watched it. And this was my first time watching the thing. And it was not what I anticipated, right? It was something that wasn't quite where we get to see it today, which meant that, we needed to do a little bit more. So we, put our heads together, thought, okay, what does this story need? We need more narrative clarity, right? This is a comedy, so the focus should be on the comedy, right? We shouldn't have any sort of barrier to entry to enjoy that comedy. So from the audience's perspective, minimizing the questions of like, what, who, why, what's going on? Was a big necessity. And that's okay to admit. That's something that, we had the benefit of, honesty to each other, and we're like, well, what does this really need? We need clarity. So we were able to raise some more money, brought us back into production. We kind of, each kind of contributed to these sort of wrinkles on the story idea, the major structure of it. We brought in these talking head elements that trades in that kind of classic doc format, which, for us was a creative way to, insert necessary exposition to move the story along. It was a very, very intentional narrative device that I believe, we kind of get away with it, right? Exposition is a bummer in a movie. When two people are talking, they're like, this is happening for this reason. Oh no, it's going to make me feel like this. And then it's going to be that's bad, right? That's bad filmmaking. But in this way, we really capitalize on the documentary format, talking heads. And it was just a sort of like kind of unapologetic way to get what we needed. And we wrap, and a month later, the pandemic hits. And so, like everyone, we, all of our intentions, our schedules, our projections were called into question. The movie was not the priority for a number of months, just because of people sort of like, what is the world? What's changing beneath our feet by the very second, by the very day. And ultimately, and I kind of feel myself talking at length now, and I apologize, but just to give you the kind of interest, I think it's an interesting story. What was great about the pandemic for us is it gave us the benefit of time. We no longer had to align with anyone else's deadlines other than our own creative deadlines or ambitions, right? So what that translated to from the producer's perspective was a discount in rates. I could hire someone for half the amount if I told them, take as long as you need. And that was one benefit the pandemic gave us. And through that time, we had the opportunity to enjoy some festivals, Jeff, yours among them. Wonderful experience for the three of us to have to get that, premiere in town. And ultimately we executed on our festival, our post, we wrapped, we cut the thing, we mixed and mastered the whole, key art, we aligned with the distributor. Like, we were able to do everything that a film would, hope to do. And now we get to see it through release. And I know I'm really proud of that. I know I can speak for the rest of our team. we're really proud of that. And it served, beyond just the entertainment value that we get, it served us in so many more ways than I think I could have ever sort of predicted. So now I'm forgetting the question. I'm not sure what the hell I'm talking about. Apologies, but thanks for letting me ramble there.
I forgot the question too. I don't even know if there was, but we were just talking. I think the question was, what brought you in on Killer Whales?
There you go.
And now I'm going to pose that question actually to Willow and Wyatt. Were you looking? It sounds like in a way, I think the three of you really do have. I hope you continue to work together. It's wonderful. Hey, it's actually a little rare for three friends to work on something this big together and remain friends. So golf clap for that fact. Because this can be, it shows a level of maturity, I think, that because creative pursuits are really hard to collaborate on when you have when you're established as friends. And you each do bring such a different skill set or a different personality to it that I see why the combination worked. But when you pulled Tom in and you were just thinking post, were you thinking to yourselves, we really need Tom's skill set for this?
I think we did think that. I think, Willow and I are both, I would say we both value the creative act a lot. And I think that's a kind way of saying that we're both not so logistically minded. We're not so organized often. I think we're dreamers, and we need some grounding sometimes. And I think that became very clear at one point in this process, that we needed someone to ground us. And I believe, Willow, you got through to Thomas. I was always trying to get Thomas on board with my stuff, but I think Willow was the one who did it, who got it done.
Yeah, I can't remember all of the, the texts and all that, but I remember. Yeah, I think I remember speaking with Tom at the rap party and just feeling like it would be good to have another voice of some sort. I really didn't know anything about what we know now of, what the post-production process looks like and certainly the distribution process. And that's something that we've all learned along the way. But I think I felt that it was somehow a good idea to have just another brain in the room and another fresh eye on the movie. But that was really more of like intuitive than anything.
And speaking to that, what you were saying earlier, Jeff, about how can be difficult for three friends to make a movie this big and remain friends. I think the 3-person element makes communication a lot better. Oftentimes we'll have, like a disagreement about something, and we'll, 2 of us will, and then we'll bring in a third to be like, can you show us reality here? Because we're holding 2 different realities. And I think that's been really nice. And I think one thing I'm very grateful for is how well we communicate, and that's essential. And because we've run into a lot of disagreements, we've had emotional moments where we've wanted to throw it all away. We've had moments of being mad at each other, and, I think we've had it all, but we've always come back and communicated well. And Tom was, in hindsight, an obvious choice to come in and round out this trio, add another voice. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He's the Ringo who came in and made everything work.
Yes.
Exactly. But I'm gonna add because also Tom missed out on my blurting out of a series of compliments. I do find this process interesting as a fan of the film, because Tom's character, who he plays in the film, is one of the funniest. And now I know that character did not exist until you entered post, right?
Yes.
And so that the way that character fits into the whole is pretty incredibly well done because he's absolutely hilarious. And he even brings in the killer movie producer vibe.
Yeah, I was really occupying that, 5% of my personality, if that was my entire personality.
That Donnie was the same thing. Every character, came from a little Donnie's a naive filmmaker in way over his head, which was me. And here comes Thomas in as producer. And, we of course up, the drama of the whole thing. And so now we've got a douchey producer. I would say Tom is not a douchey producer.
But, there's a version of my, in an alternate universe where I am just this awful creature, this man, this disgusting yuck.
Goatee wearing producer.
That, I think we can all admit we're, versions of ourselves that we don't want to be, but it's better to maybe embody that to some degree at least for the sake of comedic purposes. Cause that was fun. It was a fun performance for me. It was a fun opportunity and a shameless way to get myself back on screen. I come from like the old background in acting a little bit. So, yeah, it worked. I'm glad to hear that what we set out to do worked.
And I'll add, I mean, I don't want to be too redundant, but the absurdity of the film and the insanity of the characters, I mean, taking whatever percentage of yourself and then exaggerating it into a full character is a great way to create a very funny and very real person because you're basing it on something real.
Yeah.
So there's authenticity with exaggeration. And I bet that was written on a chalkboard once in Monty Python's Flying Circus writers, right? Is how many of those sketches is just, the most exaggerated housewife you could have, or the most exaggerated, certified public accountant you can have. Like, yeah, it is a great way to write.
Yeah. And that makes me think that, a lot of the way we wrote this was to create a sort of safety net for our own failure. Like we knew the cards were stacked against us in a lot of ways, given our budget, given what shape the script was when we started filming, that the concept of a filmmaker setting out to make a failed movie was giving us a little bit of a safety net, because if we as filmmakers set out and failed to make this movie, then it's feeding back into the movie. So we wanted to create like a sort of system that was generating itself, I guess. And the movie became that in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And you're making me think of, if someone wants to, you can go to the Sherman Oaks Film Festival website and watch our Q&A from November 2021. But I remember expressing to Willow about your direction that, Wyatt just made me think of how well directed it is and how visual it is in the confined spaces, and how you were just able to add so much dimension to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how to speak to that, but I think part of that is that we built the set. We built this apartment open house double room and painted the walls red, so like it really pops on camera. I don't know. I think overall, like the visual conceit for the movie is to do lots of little vignettes. That's how I conceptualized it at the time. And for each vignette to take on the character of the person it's portraying. So for instance, like, the tiki paradise of this septuagenarian Dizzy Daisy is all gold and saturated, and it looks like an old person's home gone crazy. Or the same thing for Clara, who's a spirit medium, like everything's saturated in red. So I just wanted the environments to really reflect the characters and the psychology of characters. Because I also feel that's a real characteristic of LA. You have like these really wacky people living out there. And everyone's so encouraged to be this like huge personality. And people really wear it, like, you see people walking pigs around on the street, or just like some really fruity stuff. So I felt it was also true to the city and the culture we were shooting in.
Yeah, for sure. In a lot of ways, for a film made by a couple of highfalutin Stanford grads, you really did nail the Hollywood fringe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because the subculture, I mean, I'm a third generation Angelino. So to me, LA is just a place where all your aunts and uncles and cousins live. It's not, but I am aware that most of the people that have served me pancakes came to this town to be Tom Cruise. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, obvious question is, so after the additional shooting and then thanks to COVID, a less rushed second post-production, at what point did you say to yourselves, all right, we've got it, it's done? Did you mothball it for a while to wait for COVID to pass and everyone to get vaccinated so you could get people go hit festivals and have a real experience instead of a virtual one? Or did you just go out there and just play with it?
I think this is a good question for Tom, because there were several points where Willow and I wanted to stop, and Tom went back in with a detailed mind. So I'll let you go, Tom.
Thank you. I will say I really did push this movie past the point that I think a lot of us would have otherwise let it. It's always
from a production standpoint or
from a story perspective. I mean, we kept cutting the movie. I learned how to use whatever the cutting Premiere, so I could take a pass at the edit myself.
Whatever the cutting.
That's
whatever the cutting thing is.
I'm like, such a novice, but I have, an innate rhythm. I think that kind of comes from my musical background, other performative backgrounds, that I just had a sense of where it could be. Right. And that was such a benefit to our team because I had never seen this thing before. I didn't know what they were trying to make when they were making it. Willow had cut this together after directing it, and I got to take a pass at something that had a slightly different rhythm. And I think that kind of ebb and flow between our kind of ideas of what this could be ultimately helped us land in that position. So it did push the timeline significantly. I will say, to try to answer your question directly, the plan that we created was pretty much immediately scrapped. COVID threw such a wrench in things, and we, ultimately took guidance for someone who, ultimately we kind of realized wasn't really serving us from a very experienced position. I think we would make decisions that are very different from the ones that we've made, but ultimately, whatever happened for the best reasons. And I think we're excited about where we've landed. Gravitas, our distributor, approached us over a year and a half ago wanting to distribute the film, and we decided to hold off, wait for a more complete run through the festival cycle to see if distribution through a company like that was our best option. I think we were still kind of answering the questions of, is self-distribution something we wanted to consider? We were still picking up these little, breadcrumbs of learning experiences to kind of put together a full pie, which is not a saying that anyone really has ever used before, but let's just roll with it. If you get what I mean. Thanks. So no, we didn't have much of a plan that we were able to adhere to. And it very much was just sort of listening to things as they came. And when we were ready, when we did feel like, there was a final cut at some point, it just became too complicated to get the mix from our Foley artist to our composer to us to edit it. And the time difference in Berlin, I think the mixture of exhaustion and a cohesive story was the kind of that's when we crossed the finish line. We're like, okay, no more, let's be done with it. Although now that I say it, we did take an axe to a couple scenes after our kind of first round of previews, after it kind of played at festivals even. But we reapproached our distributor. They were kind enough to come meet us back at the table, and were able to negotiate something that we felt was favorable to us. And here we are.
So that's an interesting story. Did Gravitas would the first meeting with them or the first encounter with them, was that festival based or was that through Circus Road or?
This was pre-Circus Road. This was pre-Glenn in Our Life. This was them reaching out to us, seeing it kind of perform at the Atlanta Underground Festival in the fall, I believe, of 2021. And maybe even a little earlier. I'm forgetting the past 2 years, as we all have, feel like they've blended together. But they approached us and we said, I think we're going to hold off, and they were kind enough. They understood, and they're very reasonable people, and we've been able to make some really great relationships with them. But they
Which is cool. I mean, I think that shows, I don't know if that was a unanimous decision, but it definitely shows not just patience, but wisdom, really, to just, all right, hold off, make it through more of the festival run, and then really see where you land. And the fact that you made cuts during the festival run, I totally get it. I mean, honestly, this does not apply to your film, but all the time there's stuff at the festival. And I'm thinking to myself, I love this work. And if they would only cut it a little more, it'd be even better.
Absolutely. Shorter is always better, especially in the land of features, in my opinion. Nothing really needs to be over 90 minutes. And we're coming in just shy at like 88 or something like that, which I'm incredibly proud of, because it was long. It was longer, much longer.
It was long. Tom and I disagree on the length of how long movies should be. But
yes, we do. Classically, which is why we need to keep working. We keep working together so well. Exactly.
But I think. So sorry, I was just going to say. I think one of the benefits of watching your movie at a festival with other people is you can tell when a scene's a clunker, and like it's just kind of painful to get through, and that it needs work. You just don't get that if you don't have a live audience.
Yeah, and that's such a better audience, whether it's friends and family or crew or anything. It's even, I bet it's better than, growing up here. I went to, preview screenings where they would hand us the thing to fill out at the end of the film and give opinions. And you look around the room and you would say to yourself, well, there's like maybe 2 worthwhile opinions in this whole freaking room. But whereas a festival audience, I mean, it's probably half other filmmakers and people who truly care about it. I'm sure Atlanta Underground sounds like a great venue. So yeah, very, very, I just want to congratulate you all that you did go back in after watching it with an audience instead of, having a stick to your guns attitude or something else. Yeah. And total runtime actually really doesn't matter. It's just as long as the story is told as well as it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, something that I have digested through this experience is, it's reverence is great up until a certain point, right? Until it's just pride. And I think, if you can treat your art as something that isn't holy, but is something, to be respected, then you can show yourself the grace to end up at something that might be better for somebody else than it has to be for you.
For sure. All right. So you go through this festival run and return to Gravitas, which is great. And premiering online, same day we're going to throw this conversation out there. So have you decided what's next? Or are you just recovering from the killer whales? From start to finish, it sounds like it was probably 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
4 to 5.
Yeah, it was,
actually.
Yeah.
I think it's around, since our conversation at Austin, Wyatt, I think it's like 1,800 days.
Oh my. It's, I think that, there have been many times in this process where we have felt like, and I'll speak for Willow because I know it's been a really long time since that beginning, but for Willow and me is that if there were periods in this where we were like, I need to think about something else, like creatively, I need to go somewhere else for a while because this can't take up my entire like creative energy for 4 years. And so there are definitely long moments where it wasn't the creative focus. I started painting in the meantime, and I've now been painting for 3 years, and I love painting, and it's a big part of my life now. And it just, we've felt various times like we need to get this off the plate, so that we can move forward creatively and evolve and do something else that's a new interest. But at the same time, like I was saying in the beginning, Jeff, there have been several gusts of wind. So like little moments like, okay, it's time to get distribution, where we're forced to go back in, and you find like a third, fourth, fifth wind that you didn't know you had for it. And I found that in making a feature independently with, as few resources as we were starting with, you got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And then every so often, a gust of wind will come and push you along. And, so that's what I'll say.
Absolutely. Well, and I hypothesize about this sometimes. I think that one reason why I often find indie films more rewarding than what Hollywood puts out is because Hollywood's never going to give artists the time to marinate and think and change ideas and go back in. Honestly, it's a business, and the screenwriter has to stop when they're ready to start, and production, and then there's so much less. I'm tempted to say respect for the creative process, but I mean, when you're doing it for yourself, you're just not going to cheat yourself. I guess some people probably would, but I'm glad that the three of you did not cheat yourselves and not allow yourselves to complete what you needed to complete creatively.
Totally. I mean, like if you're doing indie film, like creative freedom is the only benefit you get, right? And it's a huge benefit, and that's why we're indie filmmakers. But if you're not respecting that perk, or like that power, then you shouldn't be doing indie film, I think. Because it's so difficult otherwise.
Sure. And I don't know if you got a sense of it at our festival, but yeah, we focus on the films that do strive creatively, because people submit some pretty good films, or people just running around with guns shooting at each other and solving a crime, and it'd have to be excellent for us to include it at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, because if you want to watch people running around with guns, there's a lot of choices. There's not something crude. They're not taking them. They're just saying, I don't have the money for a Hollywood film, so I'm going to make the closest thing to it I can with the little money I can. Like, really? Because I'd rather have the drug sequences you include, or the dream drug sequences you include in Killer Whales. That's way more interesting than low budget gunfights.
Yeah.
Well, do the two of you have a series of? Are there more projects in mind?
Not yet.
Go for it, Willow.
Well, I was going to say, I think all of us have independent projects that we've been indulging in that are much lower risk, lower stakes, just smaller projects, basically, because Killer Whales has been such a behemoth. I think in terms of like our collaboration as artists on what's next, we haven't had time we haven't had the space to really feel out what that could be yet, because we're still in the middle of, we're coming to the end of the distribution process, but it's been a fairly intensive grind. So I think, I think just from my perspective, that needs to come to a close, and then I think we can all see where we're at creatively, and like where we want the next couple of years to go. because these are like year-long projects,
No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. You have to get this. You have to free yourself of killer whales, and you've still been focused on the social media and assets and all kinds of things. So yeah, you're still deep in this.
Why I want to hear what you think too.
Yeah, no, I think that's really well said, Willow. I think it feels like with killer whales, we like dove in, we went on an adventure, in the like traditional hero's journey sort of way of thinking about making this movie. Like we went through fire and flame and we're just now on the long walk home. And I think we need to, when we get home, we need to sit and rest and take it in and then, get some clarity on what happened over the last 3 years, 4 years. What happened and what do we want to have happen next? Because I also think these were very formative 4 years for each of us, and that we found our respective voices. I think maybe 2 years ago, I felt like I was really, really finding my voice. And that was in the middle of this, and Willow I've seen develop further in their voice. And likewise with Thomas. So I think we need to have a little separation, and then I have a feeling we'll come back with something with more clarity, as different people, and that's what I
think. I really feel that. For me, I think one of the things that's really worked well between us three, and that has allowed us to continue on through the long process of making the movie, is that we have this fundamental respect for each other's voice and a love for what comes out when we're allowed to be free. And I think that is kind of the most essential thing for artists who are going to collaborate, because it's always the creative differences that bring people apart, like this position that like my voice is more important than yours, and we're blessed with not having that kind of curse of our collaboration. So I feel that it's somewhat inevitable that we're gonna come back together again.
For sure. And I never asked, I won't ask your ages. I mean, I could probably be your dad's, but 4 years is a long time. That's back in my mind. I'm doing the math, and I don't know when you finished university, but yeah, this could represent like 1/5 to 1/6 of your lifespan. So
yes.
Who wants to think of it that way? But 4 years, that's probably how long you were in college. So
yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was a film school.
You went to you created your own film school through a project, which as Tom mentioned, I think it was Kevin Smith and Ed Burns and people like that 30 years ago ran around saying, skip film school and just make a feature. And if you have it right, you have it right. So excellent. That's great to hear. Anything either of you want to add before we wrap it up?
Well, I would just say I would add some gratitude for what you've done for us, Jeff. As we talked about in the beginning, you really were one of the first champions of the movie, because that was our premiere, really our LA premiere. And just your words have helped us help us carry us forward, because there are so many moments when you make this where you're like, is this the worst movie ever made? Or is this a great movie? Or is this like, you just totally, when you're in the weeds, you can't really know what you're making here. And then when you, a curator and someone who runs a festival and sees a lot of movies, came in and had all these really nice things to say, that was huge. So Thank you.
It really was. Yeah.
My pleasure. Honest. That's why I do it. There's very little money to be made in film festivals. So you very much like indie film, you do it for the love of the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to, I might've been on the festival circuit with some features about 30 years ago. It's kind of 25-ish years ago. And, I just do my best to be the programmer I wish I'd met.
Appreciate that.
And I met one like that. One guy at Slam Dance was quite lovely. And then other people were not. What are you going to do? And he's not in it anymore. But do you want to mention social media handles and websites and stuff where people can get the Killer Whales info?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've concentrated everything mostly on Instagram. So it's at Killer Whales Movie. You'll find everything there, all the updates. And then the movie will be released tomorrow, July 26th, on Apple TV, Amazon, YouTube, and Google, and a bunch of other places. But those are the Apple and Amazon, the places we're asking people to concentrate their efforts.
For sure. And I'm sure if they go to @Killer Whales Movie on Instagram, there's a link tree or something along.
There's a link tree for sure in there. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Exactly.
There's also a TikTok if you're a TikToker.
Which obviously I'm too old to be on TikTok, but I hear it's pretty hip. I hear it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Are you doing clips and previews on there, or any new stuff, or?
No, it's all clips, little edited clips. Personally, I haven't explored TikTok myself, so I'm a noob to it. I think Wyatt's more comfortable on there. But just seeing what we can get, try it out.
I know you appreciate my fandom, and so I'll just close my end of this chat with, I wouldn't mind seeing Donnie Wonder again someday, because whether it's on TikTok or something else.
Oh my goodness!
Thank you, Jeff.
What can I say?
He'll be back.
That's very good news. Very good news. I will close out with my closing spiel, as I refer to it. So the first one. Well, first, people should go to @Killer Whales Movie and do what they can. Watch it, and when you watch it, this is an indie film. They raise the money themselves. They put years of effort into it. So maybe people listening, please take those 3 minutes and write a review. Give it 5 stars out of 5. Give it, 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 if you want, IMDb not to pull it, or sometimes. I've heard rumors that too many 10-star reviews and they start chopping them off. But anyhow, review this film. Say nice things about it. Be supportive. If you're kind enough to rent it on Apple TV, iTunes, whatever it is, give it a good rating. Be nice, And as long as I'm talking about ratings, what a segue. This podcast is rateable. Did you know that? People can like, follow, and subscribe, whatever it is, and give it 5 stars. Always appreciated and helpful. If you want to learn more about this podcast, Discover Indie Film, it's pretty simple. It's discoverindiefilm.com. And on social media, it's @DIFWins. And we didn't need to talk about it because we're just talking about the feature film Killer Whales, but there's a companion TV series called Discover Indie Film on Amazon Prime Video. If you want to see wonderful short films that were handpicked from the festival circuit, that's what that is. And we mentioned both film festivals because Killer Whales was at Sherman Oaks Film Festival last November, and it was at Film Invasion LA last June. So if you want to learn about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, which is coming up probably sooner than I am comfortable mentally accepting, go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's @ShermanOaksFF on social media. And Film Invasion Los Angeles, which we hold every June, is FilmInvasionLA.com, and it's @FilmInvasionLA on social media. And I think that's all the begging I need to do. So thank you both. We're gonna stop recording, and then Willow and Wyatt, we're gonna start recording again. and they will answer the Discover Indie Film 4 questions. So you get to know what their favorite movies are and some movies they don't like as much. And that one's a little, I hope it'll be more fun. I hope this was fun for you too, but it's always fun to have a chat about movies when you got some creative people on the line. So thank you, Wyatt. Thank you, Willow.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
And thank you everyone for listening.